When I say the word boundary, what comes up for you? Many people think boundaries are walls in place to keep others out, cold, rigid, defensive. But healthy boundaries are not walls. They are bridges, bridges that create clarity, safety, and respect in relationships. Without boundaries, resentment builds, expectations get confusing, people unintentionally hurt each other. Boundaries are not just for you. They're also a gift to the people around you because they remove confusion and create honest relationships, decreasing unnecessary conflict. Today, we are talking boundaries, what they actually are and why they matter. Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Britannia Stowe, joined by my sister and co-host, Annika Wilder. Enjoy the show. I was talking with one of my yoga students recently, and she told me she's been working on setting healthy boundaries. She's 26 and had never really done that before. I loved the way she described it. She said, it's like I have this moat around me, keeping people away, keeping me safe. For a long time, I felt like I needed really strong walls. But now I'm learning that I can have a drawbridge. I can lower it all the way down or only halfway. I'm the one in control of that. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I thought she put this together so beautifully, that visualization of a moat and a drawbridge. And honestly, I wish I had been that wise at 26. At 26, I was kind of a mess. And of course, I assumed it was everyone else's fault. I didn't have healthy boundaries, and the walls I had built were made out of scar tissue from all my open wounds. I was afraid to let people in, and I would push them out before they ever got close. I really wish someone had told me about setting healthy boundaries at that age. So, this episode is dedicated to 26-year-old Britannia. Here you go, girl. So, what are boundaries? Boundaries are the guidelines you set for how you allow others to treat you and how you treat others. They define emotional space, physical space, time, energy, and responsibilities. So think about boundaries as property lines. This is where my responsibility ends and yours begins. I picture kind of a white picket fence and a giant tree that's kind of going in the middle. Without boundaries, everything becomes blurry. Are you cutting that grass or am I? Does that tree belong to you or to me? You start carrying things that were never yours to carry. So, to put this in another analogy, another perspective, besides property lines, maybe think of soccer. Have you ever played soccer? I got into soccer in high school and really loved it. And I was okay. I wasn't bad. I played, for several years, and I played several different sports, but in soccer, every player has a position, right? So you have your forward, your midfielder, your defender, and you have your goalie. And each position operates within a specific area of the field. Those zones exist for a reason. If the forward, who should be outscoring goals, drops back into the midfielder space or even the defender space, they can't do their job. They stop creating scoring opportunities. The field gets crowded and plays break down, and we become vulnerable to the other team. As a defender, specifically left fullback, my job was simple but important: protect my side of the field, keep the ball in play, and stop the opposing team from getting past me. I worked within a very specific zone. I could move up to support the midfielders, but never beyond them. I could shift down towards the center, but only so far because when my opponent came charging down, I had my side to defend. I knew it was my responsibility. The right fullback wasn't going to come all the way across the field to come save the day, and the sweeper behind me was the last line of support. Sometimes the ball would drift out of my zone or at the very edge of my zone, where it could be either my responsibility or my teammates. In those moments, communication is everything. We would call out, I got it, or mine, so that the other player would know to back off. When we communicated, everything flowed smoothly. There was no collisions. We didn't, collide into each other because I knew that's her responsibility or this is my responsibility. But when we didn't communicate, which happened, we collided physically running into each other and creating a bigger problem than the one we were trying to solve. Boundaries work the exact same way. I can have my own zone and my own space where I operate the way I operate. But if I don't communicate that, or if I don't understand how the people around me move, then we're going to run into conflict. For example, maybe I have a boundary around when I come home from work. And when I come home, I might need 10 to 15 minutes before I'm bombarded with questions and responsibilities because I just need time to transition from work Britannia to home Britannia. And even if that is being welcomed with a hug and a kiss, maybe I just need some space. But if I never communicate to my husband, he isn't intentionally crossing that boundary. He is crossing an invisible line when he greets me hello or starts asking about my day right away. And when that line gets crossed, I might feel triggered or react in a way that creates completely avoidable conflict. All of it could have been prevented with a simple conversation. Hey, babe, when I get home, I just need a few minutes to decompress. That's it. It's that simple. Or maybe you're a hugger, okay? And you're super affectionate and warm and touchy-feely. You love to hug on people that you care about because that's how you express love. You just love to love on those you love, right? But imagine you have a best friend who's kind of the opposite. Physical touch is definitely not their love language. They love you dearly, but every time you go in for a hug, they secretly cringe. They wish you didn't touch them so much because they just like their space. Wouldn't you want to know that? Wouldn't it break your tender heart to just realize that someone you love feels so uncomfortable around you simply because you don't know about their boundary? Well, of course you would. You don't want to make your friends uncomfortable. And if they simply communicated that boundary, you would know how to show up for them in a way that it actually feels good. Maybe they value words of encouragement. Maybe they prefer quality time. Whatever the boundary is, knowing it helps us understand where their space is, how they like to operate, and where your space begins. So, why are boundaries so important? People often think, and I was one of them, that boundaries are selfish, or they think that you're being extra by having boundaries. But the opposite is true. Healthy boundaries create respect. People know where you stand, and they don't have to question it. Emotional safety. Everyone knows what is okay and what isn't. You feel more comfortable in that space. Healthier relationships. Instead of resentment, there is clarity and energy protection. You protect your time and your emotional bandwidth. And here's the truth. Most relationship problems are not really about conflict. They're about unclear expectations and uncommunicated boundaries. Boundaries create clarity. And boundaries aren't just for you. They help others too. When you communicate those boundaries, you help people understand you, respect you, interact with you in healthier ways. I mean, imagine trying to drive without road lines. Gosh, we have all the analogies in this episode. Try imagine driving without, road lines, and there's no stop signs and no traffic lights or even speed limits. No one knows where to go or how fast to go. Without boundaries, it is like the Wild West, and every conversation or miscommunication turns into a duel at dawn. Boundaries are the lane markers in relationships. They keep everyone safe. And if you know what they are and where they lie, they don't have to be constantly communicated. And get this, if you communicate those boundaries with your friends, coworkers, significant others, you actually might inspire them to do the same. Whenever I have a conversation with my husband about boundaries, I am always the one initiating them, of course. But then I ask him, where maybe I could be better or how I could better honor his boundaries. And I find that these conversations don't divide us, they don't separate us, but they actually deepen our relationship. There becomes this knowing, this understanding that we wish was intrinsically there, without having to be said, but they do have to be said. And this doesn't mean you don't love your spouse. This doesn't mean you don't know each other because we change, we evolve. You might change your mind on where a boundary is. And so if you just expect your husband or significant other to know that this line has evolved, you're setting yourself up for failure. But by communicating them, you are actually strengthening and deepening your relationship. Boundaries show up in many areas. Time boundaries. These are boundaries that are set around the time that you have, where it is used, who gets access to it. It can be as simple as saying to your boss that you're not going to take calls after 6 p.m., or you need 15 minutes to decompress when you get home. Or maybe you turn off your notifications by, 9 p.m., or you don't look at them until 9 a.m. These boundaries protect your time, and they can be in your personal life or even your work life. But let's talk work boundaries. So these are the limits that you set around your time, energy, and responsibilities to stay healthy and sustainable. Just like positions on a soccer field, they clarify what is your role and what isn't, and how people interact with you. So some examples include if you keep getting projects thrown at you, you can say, I'll complete this project, but I can't take on any additional tasks right now. Or I need to be clarified on what my priorities are. I will take a lunch break away from my desk. Or I will take 24 hours to respond to emails. For urgent matters, please call me. There are also emotional boundaries. Emotional boundaries are the limits you set to protect your mental and emotional well being. They help you separate what is yours to carry from what belongs to someone else. Without them, it's easy to absorb other people's stress, moods, and expectations. So an example of that will be, I'm not responsible for anyone else's mood, or I care about you, but I cannot carry the burden or responsibility for your choices. Or I do not need to explain or defend my decisions. Family boundaries can be a lot like work boundaries and include your time and your energy boundaries. This helps you keep a healthy relationship with your family members. It allows you to respect each other and to find balance, especially as those relationships change as you age or you get older. So, an example could be, I am not discussing that topic anymore, or I appreciate your advice, but Jason and I will decide how to raise my baby. Or I had to say this when I first had Harvey. I would love for you to come visit, but this weekend just doesn't work for us. People who know and understand you will respect you communicating these boundaries. They won't think that you're mad at them or you're not friends with them anymore. They will appreciate that you are being direct and clear because they don't want to hurt your feelings or to cross those boundaries. There are, of course, energy boundaries, like saying, I need time to recharge, or I'd love to support you, but I don't have capacity right now, right? You got to protect your energy. What about physical boundaries? Maybe you're a hugger like me and you have a friend who doesn't like to be touched. Being able to communicate that I'm not comfortable with you hugging me all the time, but I love seeing you, right? Or please knock, don't just walk in. These are physical boundaries. And of course, there are so many others, but those are just some examples of some boundaries, healthy boundaries that you can set and you can communicate. It's important to acknowledge that boundaries are not punishment. And I used to think that boundaries were a negative thing and that it is kind of punishment. Like, oh, you know what? You crossed a line, boundary, wall, backup. But that's not true. And you should not set boundaries in a space of retaliation or vengeance because boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are not meant to hurt someone. They're meant to protect the healthy relationship. They're not control. You can't control anyone else but yourself. Boundaries are also not ultimatums. So don't say something unless you're going to be able to follow through on it. And of course, they are not silent expectations. They have to be communicated, even with your twin sister. Okay, you need to be able to communicate these boundaries. So, expectations and boundaries. Expectations often live inside boundaries. When boundaries aren't communicated, expectations remain unspoken. You may expect respect, but if you never explain what respectful behavior looks like to you, people are left to guess, and people guess wrong all the time. We sometimes forget that every person thinks differently. Do you ever do that? I assume everyone looks at the world as I do, and I'm shocked when I learn they look at the world so different. So we each experience life differently. Our world is different. Our perception is unique. When we communicate our boundaries and clearly express our expectations, you reduce the chances of triggers, misunderstandings, and unnecessary conflict. Healthy communication can sound like, I want to continue this conversation, but not if we're yelling. Or I'm happy to help, but I need 5 minutes to finish this email. Or I need some advance notice. Can we set a time for when I can help you? Expectations become healthy when they are spoken clearly. Communicating your boundaries and expectations does not guarantee that there won't be misunderstandings or an occasional squabble. In fact, those things are probably inevitable. But what they do is decrease tension. They increase understanding. So if you do have an opportunity that there is a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, you have the foundation and the tools to navigate it. Personally, I have found when I communicate my boundaries ahead of time, I feel calmer, even if they're crossed, because I have a guideline, I have an outline in how to navigate this. And I can say, were you aware? Or I know you were aware that I need some time to decompress. Why did you come up to me and dump all your problems when I just got home? Right. So being able to line them out doesn't just help the other person, but it helps you so that you can have that conversation if there is a misunderstanding or an exception to the rule. So, can your boundaries change? I get this question all the time. Like, I have these boundaries, but now I don't know if they're actually my boundaries. And am I being hypocritical? Can they change? They can change. You're not being hypocritical because you are meant to change. You are meant to evolve. You often become a different person over time, and you're in a different season of life, or maybe your relationships change. You know, what was healthy for me at 25 is definitely not healthy for me at 40. And that's okay. I mean, in my 20s, I really struggled with boundaries and honestly, my identity too. One year, I was fully committed to being LDS. I didn't drink, I wore very modest clothing. And then the next year, I partied and I was wearing a low top and a short skirt. One year, I prioritized this. The next year, I prioritized that. I was trying to find my way. And the only way I knew to do that was to live it, to make moves, and to realize that was not the right path. So my boundaries were constantly going back and forth. And you know what? That made a lot of my friends uncomfortable. And I'm sorry for that. But I didn't do it to make them uncomfortable. I was trying to find my path, trying to set my boundaries, trying to find who I am. Now, it helps to find out who you are and understand your identity before you set your boundaries, but you live and you learn. And so, don't feel like your boundaries have to make the other person comfortable, right? These are your boundaries. And if they are true to you and you honor them, they will respect them. And if they don't respect them, maybe they're not meant to be in your life. So, how do we communicate these boundaries? I like to use, me, I always have some like trick or term. So, the C4, like boundaries are the bomb. So the four C's will help you communicate what your boundaries are. So healthy boundaries, when you're communicating them, you are going to be clear. Clear means you are not vague. You don't beat around the bush. You communicate exactly what you need and what you expect. Calm. They are not defensive. They are not meant to create drama. They're not meant to, hurt anyone. They should come from a place of peace and not defensiveness. Consistent. If you set a boundary, you have to stick to it. Now, you can, again, change your mind, but you need to communicate that if that boundary truly has changed. But if you set a boundary and one day you just don't feel like upholding it, that does not help either party. People will learn when you are consistent through repetition. Compassionate towards yourself and others. You can be kind and still firm. And I just want to know it's never too late to communicate your boundaries. When you do, just be clear, calm, consistent, and compassionate. C4. Ideally, we can communicate them early on. But if you're just learning about boundaries and you're in a long-term relationship or you have a deep friendship, don't think that it's too late to communicate because it's never too late. Sometimes we just don't even realize that we had a boundary until you start to understand the what drains you and what fuels you. And so now that you're gaining a deeper understanding of what boundaries are, you can communicate them. And I encourage you to do so. So in today's Coach Yourself segment, we're going to go through some steps to help you understand what your boundaries are. So, step one, review your energy. Ask yourself, where do I feel resentment? Where do I feel drained? Resentment is often a sign of an unspoken boundary that has been crossed or not honored. Now identify your limits. So, are you feeling drained? Are you feeling frustrated, taken advantage of? This is information, right? Be a scientist. We're gathering data. So, first, where are you feeling resentment? And then what are you feeling? What's the emotion that's coming up? Now, define your boundary and write it clearly. Even if you're not a big journal person, even if you're like, no, it can live in my head, write it down. Do yourself this favor because you have to communicate it to yourself first before you can communicate it to someone else. This is really important. You must believe your boundary before others will respect it. This is also just a great check in to see if this is actually your boundary. You can go through the first couple of steps and then communicate the boundary, say the boundary out loud, write it down, and go, actually, that's not always true, right? So allow yourself to communicate that boundary to yourself before you communicate it to others. And of course, then you can communicate it to others. That doesn't mean that you have to call every family member or coworker or list them out like, hey, I have 17 new boundaries I have to tell you about, right? But when the moment comes, it doesn't have to be the right moment. The moment is when you communicate your boundaries, is when it comes up in your mind, when it pops up and you're like, hey, I need to communicate this. So to a spouse, it could be saying, I just need one evening a night to recharge. Or to a boss, I want to do great work and I want to show up for you, but I don't understand my priorities. I need clear priorities. Or maybe to a friend, I care about you, but I can't always be available immediately. Boundaries are not rejection, they are relationship maintenance. Have you ever heard that quote? You teach people how you want to be treated, or what you don't stop, you allow. Both of these ideas support boundary setting. Boundaries are one of the greatest acts of self respect, and self respect teaches others to respect you. When you learn to say no in healthy ways, you're actually creating space for better yeses. Boundaries are one of the clearest ways to show people who you are, what you value, and what you want to live by. So the question is, where in your life might a healthy boundary bring you more peace? This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself, take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.